reform is important right now, especially?
It's especially important now because we've had a series of events. We had the synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. We had an assault on one of the members of our LGBTQ community, Kendra, this past summer. Obviously, we had Mother Emanuel. We have a great community, and I think a community that really wants to talk about this topic. So I think the timing is great for us to have increased awareness, increased education, to hear stories from people like Joe Engel, who is a Holocaust survivor. He is somebody who never wants his story to be forgotten. And we should never forget about our history, where we've been, and as we go forward, how we can lead through this and lead forward.
And what role do citizens play in this? Why do they need to come?
So I think the biggest role that the citizens have is we have to have clarity about hate in our communities. And the more educated we are, the more awareness that we have, the more effective we're going to be as leaders, the more that we're going to have empathy for other people. You know, my definition of empathy is being able to say that you can walk in somebody else's shoes, put yourself in their shoes and try to understand why they feel the way that they feel. And when we have people that are assaulted, and we have what I would call bullies in our community, how do we identify that and address that? At any age, in any community, for any reason, the more educated we are, the more effective we'll be in keeping our communities safe.
And in terms of race relations and hate crimes right now in the city of Charleston, like what do you think needs to be adjusted in order to help you prosecute offenders?
So I think that having a state law on hate crime, which is the majority of the states in the United States have that, I think that as South Carolina adopts a hate crime legislation, it's going to help our state tremendously because it'll better enable us to track those events, to kind of create a culture where we care, that we're aware, that we're interested in hearing when crimes occur, if they're generated by hate. Why is that? What's that picture as that emerges around our state? What we talk a lot about this, but are we tracking it as well as we can? I think this will better enable us to track it and get a better picture of what's going on in our communities.
What do you feel like the current state of tension is in terms of race equality, gender equality, those types of things in Charleston?
We have a fantastic city in Charleston. I think that we're pointing in the right direction. We have a great mayor, we have a great council, we have a great community, we have great partners throughout this region. I think we're in a really good place, but we can't be satisfied with that. We really need to dig down and have a greater sense of awareness, a greater education. We want to embrace this topic, and we want to look out for everybody, no matter what community they're from. The African American community, the Jewish community, the LGBTQ community, the Muslim community, no matter who is in our community, the immigrant community. We need to look out for everybody. We need to advocate for everybody, and we need to have a culture where everybody understands this idea of hate is not accepted in our communities. And I think we have that for the most part, but why would we not want to talk about it a little bit more, embrace this idea of looking out for everybody?
A quick question about that. What would you say to those who are non-minorities who may be feeling left out of this conversation?
I'm a non-minority. I feel very much a part of this conversation. As a leader in this community, I think everybody has a role. So it doesn't matter if you're a non-minority, if you're a minority, it doesn't matter if you're young or you're older and everything in between. I think everybody has a role in being educated, in being informed, in being aware, and being a part of making this a great community, which it already is, but we can be even greater.
Okay, now you kind of touched on the key players in this discussion, but how hard was it to get all these key players in a room to discuss this topic, and what's next following this discussion?
So it wasn't hard at all. It's interesting, as we talked about a lot of the recent events around the country, in Pittsburgh, and different things that have occurred around our country, it was easy to say, hey, we need to have a conversation around this. And so we've created this panel, and we have Joe Engel, who's a Holocaust survivor, and Mother Emanuel was highlighted, and different people are going to speak. And it was easy to put it together. I think the challenge moving forward is, what do we do with that? What do we do with this conversation? What do we do in getting this hate crime legislation at the state level across the finish line and implement it? How do we as a community come together and have clarity about these things? There's people following the events that happened in Pittsburgh whose kids were afraid to go to synagogue. When we had our memorial event at the Holocaust Memorial in Marion Square, there was people who wanted escorts to their cars because they were afraid because of comments and things that were happening on social media, comments that happen around the world. So we know that there's people in our communities that are not afraid to spew hate. And we have to understand that, we have to embrace that, and we have to lead through that as a community. We have to have clarity about looking out for each other.
Now,
Will there be action items for folks to walk away tomorrow with? Will there be an action plan, or is it just a conversation?
Well, one of the action items is the hate legislation and getting that across the finish line in the state of South Carolina. That's one pretty much very high priority for all of us. We have an ordinance in the city, but we believe that we should have a legislative fix in the state level, like most states in the country. And really, it's a discussion. And like any really good discussion, this is not being driven by the police, it's not being driven by the city. We have a really good group of panel members, presenters, and a facilitator who are really going to guide this in a way that we want to be productive and really truly bring awareness and education to all the participants.
okay, and have you had this discussion like with officers in your department? Like what kind of specialty training have you had, and what kind of steps do you plan on doing within the department moving
So we do a lot of training within the agency, have been for several years now, doing diversity training with the College of Charleston, with some of the members in our department, to understand the history right here in the city of Charleston about slavery and about other groups of people. That just recently had some significant training about gender identity in the LGBTQ community. That's something that as a leader, the more that I learn, the more that I realize I need to learn. So there's no end point. As we continue to build momentum, we continue to build kind of an awareness that we need to do more. So that training is really starting to build on itself. It's incorporated in the policies and our practices. We have regular conversations. And one thing that most people, I hope everybody has in common within our organization, is it's our job to look out for our community. And that means everybody. It doesn't matter what race you are, it doesn't matter what your gender identity is, it doesn't matter what your background is. It's our job to protect everybody.
Now, are you a dad? Do you mind me asking, are you a dad?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about the community you're trying to build using this discussion for your kids.
Yeah, so that's a great question, kind of personalize it. I want my kids to be in a community that's inclusive. I want my kids to be educated. I want them to be around other people. My daughter actually at one point went to a private school and she said, "Dad, I want to get out of the bubble. I want to be around people that are different than I am." And I was proud of her that she did that. And she went to a school that was very, very diverse. And because of that, she's a better person. I think she's better prepared for the real world. She's better prepared to be around other people because our world is very diverse. And if we really are going to be the best, most effective leaders, which I want my kids to make a difference in the world, wherever they go, I want them to have an impact, to be salt, to be light, whatever your measure is of making a difference. The only way they can do that is if they're prepared and they're ready. And so for them, they need to understand people that are different than themselves, and they need to be able to embrace and feel comfortable with that conversation. And it's ongoing. It's going to occur throughout all of our lives. It's not really something that has an end point.
Okay.
Thank you.